I'm here to talk with you about innovation and investment in the connected world, the opportunity that we have in technology going forward over the next, say, 10, 15 years. So, last week, Earth Now raised its first fund, first round, a Series A of over $1 billion. This is the largest round ever. Also last week, Ant Financial announced that they were going to raise a new round at a $150 billion valuation, the largest valuation of a private company today in technology. Last year, SoftBank Vision Fund announced a $100 million fund, which at that time was 30 times larger than the largest fund in technology. So what's going on here? Is this the market run amok, or is something fundamentally different happening in the technology world? I believe that it's the latter, and I think there's a good analogy that helps us understand that. In their book, The Second Machine Age, MIT professors Brynjolfsson and McAfee offer an analogy which I think gives us a good perspective on where we are today. They talked about the game of chess. Now, chess was invented in the Gupta Empire in the 6th century, and as the story goes, a peasant brought to the emperor this game and described it to him. The emperor was so impressed with the beauty and difficulty of the game that he offered a reward, whatever the peasant would desire. And the peasant said, "Now, really, all I want is to be able to feed my family." And he said, really what I would like is some rice. And he offered an analogy with the chessboard. And what he suggested is, why don't we start with 1 grain of rice on the first square, and then we'll double that, and 2 grains of rice on the second square, 4 on the third, and we'll go from there. And the emperor, impressed with the humility of the peasant, said, "Make it so." Now, we might anticipate the story from here. If we go to about the first half of the chessboard, square 31, we've got about 1.1 billion grains of rice. Now, that's about the size of a large rice paddy, as you see behind us. If you project that out a little bit further, though, go to the end of the chessboard, and we have 1 quintillion grains of rice, which is more rice than has been produced in the history of mankind. So it is only when we approach the second half of the board that at least one man gets in trouble. Now, what importance does that have to technology today? Well, I think many of you guys may see the analogy here, and that is to Moore's Law. Now, Moore's Law, Geoffrey Moore expounded on his principle back in 1965. And it was anticipated at that time. He said, now this is an analogy which has worked so far over the last 7 years, and I think this can work for the next 10 years or so. Well, here we are now, 60 years later, it is still working. And so the idea here is if we start from 1958 to today, we're on square 30 on the chessboard. What does that mean going forward? So I started in the early 90s thinking about Moore's Law. At the time, if we look on this chart here, you can see that we were in the personal computer age. And so as I charted that out over the next, say, 15, 20 years, it was quite easy to imagine that we might have a computer in our pocket. That's what we call a smart computer or a smartphone today. I can imagine having a Dick Tracy watch. That's what we call the iWatch today. Could imagine that we would have sensors in a bunch of different things. That's what we think about today as smart home, the Internet of Things, connected car. If we project this forward a little bit further, we can imagine artificial intelligence. We can imagine chips embedded in even our cells. We can imagine operations that can all be done automatically and microscopically. But as we project this out further and further, when the computing capacity gets far beyond what our human capabilities allow, the environment gets a bit murkier. So where does this lead us? Well, what I'd like to do is talk with you about 4 accelerants, which I think are going to be important for us as we go forward, which will bring us into a different computing environment, and fundamentally, I think, helps explain where we are today and what's happening in the technology and financing world. The first of those is pervasive and persistent computing. Now, McKinsey has said that the internet has impacted the first 15% of GDP. The other 85% will be impacted by the Internet of Things, and that opportunity can create $11 trillion of value in the next 10 years. A second trend is globalization. Now, when I started in the venture world back in the early 90s in Silicon Valley, we used to have the one bridge rule, which is if an investment involves crossing a bridge, it's too far away. So I now have the 2 plane rule, which is if I can get to an investment within 2 flights, then that's fair game. We truly live in a global village, and I think we can see that when I started investing in China in the early 90s, China was a laggard, then it became an imitator, and now it is a leader. And I think we're seeing that across the globe. There are many sets of innovation. A third accelerant is just the rate of technology adoption. Now, when we look at these curves here, we can see that the telephone, electricity, the refrigerator, it took decades, many decades, for those to be widely adopted in the United States. When we look today at the smartphone, the internet, these literally reached almost 100% penetration in a matter of years. We truly are, the rate at which technology spread is accelerating. And then the fourth is funding. As I started out saying, the funding capacity has greatly increased. And why is that important? I think we are moving from an era where technology has generally been an enabler of industry to one where it can be a disruptor and a creator of new industries. And to do that, we need to have a greater, achieving escape velocity, the requirements to do that are greater. What these larger funds allow us to do is to apply more capital to opportunity, which allows companies to greatly accelerate and create new industries or disrupt industries. So in summary, I think like Aldous Huxley and Brave New World, we are truly entering a new phase of our technology developments. We have 4 key enablers here. There's the confluence of cloud, mobile, sensors, and intelligence are accelerants from a technology point of view. Global innovation allows us to access talent, speed, and collaboration in a way that we've never done before. With industries, we're seeing disruption as well as enablement, and in capital, we're seeing the ability to exercise that opportunity. But as with a Brave New World, where there is opportunity, there's also responsibility. And there are important challenges that we have coming up, and we've seen this actually just in the last few weeks. We've seen the challenge and the importance of privacy. We are witnessing very much firsthand the potential and reality of human labor displacement. I have an investment in a company called Work Fusion that is very automating complex rote tasks, and I asked them, what does this mean for the human labor pool? When is this going to happen? He said, it's happening right now, and it's happening faster than we can anticipate. So part of the role of technology is to allow this to happen, but also to think through and create the job opportunities that are going to allow a seamless shift in our workforce. So with that, I will close. We have a panel that will be coming up here. I'll be moderating a panel on the artificial intelligence. We have three great and thoughtful speakers who will be with us who help address some of these problems and opportunities a little bit further. Thank you very much.